What's up, everyone, and welcome to episode 279 of Two Amazon Sellers and a Microphone, brought to you by Solozo. Today we're really excited. We're going to be talking all about selling in Mexico and Latin America. So much opportunity. Growing marketplaces. Hungry consumers for products. There's so much to talk about and so much opportunity for people that are just selling exclusively in the US or the UK right now. So we're super excited about this conversation. But joining us to talk all about it is Ramiro Velasco from GoAvance. What's up, Ramiro?
Hey guys, how's it going? You got that right, Ramiro Velasco. It was about as good as we could have hoped for. It was fantastic. Thank you.
Perfect.
Super glad to join you guys. Thank you for having me.
Oh yeah, well, we're really excited. I mean, this is fascinating. Admittedly, Chris and myself don't know much about this, so it's a great topic to talk about. And you guys you're down there doing the work, helping sellers right now, selling Latin America, and we have so many questions that we want to get into. But I want to start with you. I want to turn it over to you, Ramiro, and just give us a little background, how what you were doing previous to this, and how you ended up in the e-commerce space and Latin America specifically, and started GoAvance. Let's hear the story.
And before we get into that, those listening definitely want to go over to YouTube, check out this recording because Ramiro's got some serious swag.
Yeah.
And so you can see the swag on display. If you want to see the swag, go watch this.
As a traditional, as a guy, you don't know how to take compliments, so you get a little bit awkward. But thank you, I really appreciate it.
You gotta lean into it, right?
Oh man. So a little bit about myself. Let's see. I was born in '92. Let's start there. When I was 2.5 years old, I got moved out of the country, got flipped all around the world, lived in over 10 countries. Eventually made the call to come back to Mexico and live here, right? Like ultimately, when I was about 23, 24, I was like, you know what? Like, I want to go back home. I hadn't been back home for nearly a decade. And I was like, all right, like we gotta see if we still fit in. So I come back, by this point, like I have a degree in engineering, which I never planned to use in my life. And I don't know what to do with my life, like it's a weird spot in your life. So I started applying for jobs, seriously, just closed my eyes and threw darts. And probably the luckiest thing was I ran into my now partner, Mike Begg from Mexcio Advisors, with whom he hired me originally to do account management, sort of customer client communication and so on. And I really liked the e-commerce space, like immediately from the get-go. What it came down to is like you're consistently solving problems, right? And like the whole thing is, it's essentially every single day is your puzzle solving, and it's all I like doing. Like in my free time, like as soon as I get off work, I'm like playing chess. Like it's the same sort of thing. I'm bad at chess. No one ever tried to challenge me. I'm awful, but I play all the time. And that was about, God, I don't know, 6 years ago, right? Get really good at growing accounts, get really good at, communicating to consumers sort of why you should buy our product and all these things, basically all the marketing stuff that we do on Amazon. And then the time came to do sort of the same thing in Mexico. We're like, hey, let's do an agency and let's start, helping sellers sell and so on. And just the market was too different. And we ran into so many roadblocks. Even just setting up legal entities, even things like, hey, we need a tax ID. Yeah, well, you actually need to know a guy. And it's like, I'm trying to give the government my money. Like, why do I need to know a guy? Right. So sort of went through like legal turmoil for like 6 months. And we're like, this doesn't, like, the market's not really there for an agency. It's not really what we want to be doing. And then we saw this huge niche and like, hey, the Mexican sellers that we're working with, because we did work with a couple, with the knowledge that we're bringing in, we're smashing the market. And we're smashing the market because the way we see it is Amazon Mexico and Amazon Latin America, essentially Amazon the US about 7 years ago, right? So if you're talking 2016, 2017 Amazon, what was it? It was, hey, you got to get your bullets right. You got to get your images right. There was less marketing and more sort of like systematized algorithm hacking. And we started doing like what we normally do, and we were crushing like results that we've never like they were just silly. So we're like, wait a second, and the marketplace is barren. So we're like, what if we help sellers get into Mexico? We use our knowledge to start crushing the market and basically lower those barriers to entry. And that's sort of how we landed at our like sort of what we're currently doing. It's literally just, and then from the other side of things, like as a Mexican, I'm tired of waiting 7 days to get my products if it's something that we don't have in Mexico, and like sort of the customer experience isn't great. So it seemed like just a no-brainer. Like we can actually just help bridge that gap and lower the barriers to entry as much as possible. And yeah, it's sort of my work story and my life story are very intertwined, because I mean, you guys know this. You're working 24/7, and it sort of feels like, who are you? Oh, this is what I do, and it's like, no, but who are you? Well, this is what I do. So I guess that's a little bit of background about myself, you know, in the e-commerce space. 6 years.
Let's get it deeper. So, like, how do you help brands sell? Like, what are you doing?
Oh, okay, sure.
What are you doing there? Yeah.
Sure. All right. So a couple things. There's a bunch of ways to get into Mexico, right? If you want to do it natively, you need to. First of all, let's go by this. You guys have for sure used remote fulfillment, right? NARF,
Yep.
and it's you're paying like $8 delivery, which is ridiculous. Your consumer's paying another $8 delivery, which is ridiculous. Like it's like, well, then why are you charging it for FBA, man? Like if if the consumer's paying for it. And then like half of your items you can't get in. You've got small and light. You got restricted products. Oh, it's a pet product. You can't do it. Um, and overall, like you have no real measurement of what the market wants, right? So it's like, all right. Oh, and if you try to do Mexican FBA, it's like, all right, I'll ship the products, get them into Mexico. I mean, I'm sure we've all tried this. So let me ship into FBA, and it goes, all right, what's your tax ID? You're like, bro, like, come
what?
on, like, give me just a break. So you got a couple options. You can do NARF. You can do native, which is getting a business entity, tax ID, setting up legal representative, and all these things. Or what we figured is we can actually do that for you. What we're doing is basically acting as the sellers of your product. We are the importers and legal owners of the product. We had to figure out a bunch of things like accounting, taxes, workarounds. Like there's like a whole framework that had to happen for us to be able to consistently and safely bring in a bunch of product, because ultimately when you're liable for, you know, tens of thousands of dollars of product, like you want to make sure you're doing things right. But basically we sell under, we have a bunch of Amazon accounts. We sell under these Amazon accounts when we have the whole framework to sell your product through us. And essentially our sort of commitment, whether it's a restricted product, non-restricted product, and so on, our commitment is that your workload should end the second the product reaches my warehouse. Right? It's like, look, I can't do, if I trust me, if I could go pick up the product myself at your house or whatever, like I would do it. But I can't. So the second it reaches our warehouse, which we have a warehouse in Texas, get it off your mind. Next time I bother you, it's either with a report of like, hey, this is how much you sold, or hey, we need more product.
And how does it work for the brands? Are you buying it like at a wholesale cost, or you just take a percentage of the sale? Like what's the brand have to do?
We settled on, okay, so this is a really good question. We settled on a percentage of sales at the end, but this is for two very specific reasons. One, we want to be as cheap as possible. And the reason we want to be as cheap as possible isn't for our clients. Like, honestly, like that's secondary. It's the consumer experience. We want to pass a lot of the savings to the consumer, because obviously Mexico is a lower purchasing power country. I mean, we have like a thriving middle class, and we have like all these remote jobs and people earning in dollars, and there's all these things happening. But on average, we're a lower purchasing power country. So for us, it's like we need to be cheap so we can not be adding our costs to the consumer. So if we want to lower our costs as much as possible, we can't hold the risk of holding product, right? Like it just otherwise the risk reward is completely skewed off. So we do a percentage of sales, from which we also deduct things like, obviously Amazon will take their 15%, you know, FBA will take their cut, and so on and so on. But that's where we really use our expertise to be like, all right, this is where we're pricing the product. Are we comfortable with that? We have tons of calls that it's like, oh, the margins don't work. We're like, that's fine. Like, we're not, we can't make this work for everyone. It's like, but it's got to make sense for you. Because if it doesn't make sense for you, then all we're gonna have is angry phone calls every other weekend. I can't handle that. I don't like people being mean to me. So, but yeah, I mean, it's the whole point is like, let's be cheap, let's be easy, and let's be scalable, right? Because look, ultimately, and this is sort of where we really hit the niche in the market is, it's a gamble. Anytime you're allocating resources, whether it be capital, whether it be inventory, whether it be time, there's opportunity costs, and then it's always going to be a gamble. Now, Mexico is an unproven market. Mexico is a market that is coming on the up and up. Like, we've had like 3 years, 30% year over year. Like, it's on the way up. NARF, and also NARF doesn't cover Mercado Libre. So like, there's a whole of upside, like, and we know, but we understand that you probably don't want to allocate time and capital that aggressively for somewhere that you're not sure if it's going to work. So that's where we're saying, look, we can lower these barriers of entry as much as possible. Because you know what, like, if you're not Mexican, you're coming in and you want to start a business entity, let's do it natively. It's going to cost you 30, 40, 50K. Because you pay what I call the non-Spanish speaking tax, right? And it's fair, and I think it's fair and valid. Like, I totally get it. But what we figured is, look, it's an unproven market. We're essentially offering a chance to get in early into the market and really like get a head start. Like, we were doing some numbers the other day. A client that we've worked with in the U.S. for years and years and years, they're doing in the U.S. On average. So this is including branded search terms and all these things. 74 cents CPC, right? Like, average.
Cheap.
In Mexico, it's 14 cents CPC.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, when they're like, how much do we need to launch? I'm like, not a lot. Like, we can do it.
Not a lot.
So yeah. So, but we understand. So just going back to what I was saying, we understand that it's an unproven market. So what we're saying is, we can lower that risk for you, so we can really help essentially play vendor central and fill out the market niches across the board is sort of the
Talk about the negative side of the NARF program, because as sellers, we're like, oh, cool, NARF, let's do it. But I know there's a bad experience on the customer side of that. So break that down. Why is NARF not a good thing?
So as a seller, there's one bad thing, I think, which is, well, there's a bunch of you talking like, oh, we're not generating the right demand and everything, but like, directly, there's one bad thing. I don't want to pay $8 FBA for something that cost me $4 in the US. Like, right? Like, but as a consumer, if you guys were on Mexican TikTok, you would see there's so many memes about like, I don't want to buy something, pay another pay $8 on top of whatever I bought to have to wait 7 days to get it. Like, that's insane. Like, we've moved so much.
Go there again, because I don't think everybody knows all this. So if I enroll my products in the NARF program and somebody buys it in Mexico, the consumer has to pay additional fees for it to get there, and they got to wait longer.
So anything over a threshold that depends on a per category basis will be subject to tax, which it's one of the big things that people are getting around, which is like, smaller items you're not paying the tax on. In those cases, like NARF, it's great, or it has its upsides. If it's above a certain threshold, you'll be paying tax, which already you're adding to the shipping. Another thing, statistically, in Mexico, the amount of consumers that have Prime is very low. Now, this is a huge breaking point for us. Like, you have to consider, we basically treat it as if everyone's paying for shipping anyway. Because if someone doesn't have Prime, it doesn't matter if you have a Prime subscription. If you have it in FBA, they're paying for shipping as well, right? So what we're doing here is essentially double dipping, or Amazon doing is double dipping on the shipping, and that's passed on to the consumer. So just based on all these factors, what you end up seeing is products being sold natively, so like in from Mexico, even at slightly higher price points, will convert way better. Because if we know something as Amazon sellers and Amazon buyers is at 2-day shipping, is a huge plus. So there's the time factor of receiving my product is a huge plus, right? And I'm sure you've gone through it like in a rush, like it happened to me last year. Friend's birthday, I did not get him his present. And I was like, oh my God. And Prime and Amazon was like, all right, it's 2-day shipping. And I was like, that's not even good enough. I was like calling local shops trying to find what I was going to get him. So there's a huge time factor that is always going to be an issue. And for us, like, it doesn't make sense to have it come from the US and wait nearly a week.
What are some categories that you see a lot of growth in now in Mexico that are just, gaining a lot of momentum? Are there certain categories that are just booming?
Yeah. I mean, look, we have a rollout strategy, which obviously we play a little bit close to our chest. But what I can say is general consumer goods are a real focus right now for setting up for Q4. That it makes complete sense, right? Where it's like we see a stronger seasonality than in the US. I mean, in the US, Q4, look, we all talk about Q4. We love Q4. And as an agency, you'll love Q4. But at the same time, Q4 is accounted for. Everyone sort of sits around and go, oh, and then in Q4, we'll like do this multiplier, and then we'll hit this goal. Like we all sort of just accept it. In Mexico, the general consumer behavior is like around Christmas time, around this shopping time, you go, have you checked on Amazon? You can probably get it cheaper. Hey, have you checked on Amazon? There's still that conversation happening. It's not you don't assume that everyone already has. So seasonality that we're seeing for Q4 is massive. So general consumer goods, absolutely massive. And then we're finding a lot of just what we're focusing on is niches that people have a hard time getting access to. We have the internal capabilities to approve. I mean, when I say we approve, we're not the government, but to get approvals for a lot of restricted areas, right? Whether that be cleaning, whether that be, electronics, like a lot of the stuff that needs to be cleared by customs first or governments first was sort of our where we really started seeing like, oh, these markets are basically dominated by the cheapest item you can find. And that's not what consumers are going to always gravitate towards, right? So that's where we're seeing really good results with the consumers that we've brought in, with the clients that we've brought in. Cleaning was surprising. Cleaning was really surprising. I've been shopping on Amazon for 10 years now, right? Or longer. And I was like, why would you ever buy your detergent on Amazon? That makes no sense. Just go to the shop and get it. And it turns out people do. So, okay. I'm not going to say no to that.
Well, I listen to this. The business model is fascinating, and it's almost a no-brainer for sellers like Chris and myself in the U.S. I mean, look, I don't even want to contemplate trying to set up all the business entities and the capital into it when, like you correctly said, it's untested. Like, how do I know how my products are going to do? I mean, I'm going to, they might do great, they might not do great, and I'm out all of that capital that I invested in getting the right structures. That being said, it's also easier. It's like you mentioned, it's like having a vendor account. It's like we'll just siphon off 1,000 units that are going to go to you. You handle everything. And the flexibility on growth is really easy there. We can keep adding products from our line to what you sell. So I'm fascinated by it because I think it makes perfect. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And it's very intriguing. As for us in the United States, okay, if this is something that we're interested in doing, are there products that can't be sold in Mexico? What does it look like to get the products to you? Customs or whatever needs to be done. What's the challenges on our end, since you're solving the challenges on that end?
That's such a good question. We unfortunately do have a bunch of calls where it's like, we actually can't run your product. We're sorry, but we do the legwork, right? Like again, like my mentality, look, I was an account manager for years. I know what it's like to have people be mad at me. So I'd rather do the legwork. And I'm also incredibly conflict averse, which is a whole different thing. Um, what we do is do the legwork to say, hold on, give me like a week. We're gonna run it by the experts and know if we can do your product or if we can't. Now we've slowly opened up a bunch of these doors where now we can do more and more as we get more permits for the company. Because obviously, the way it works in Mexico is the company has the permission or like the approval to handle certain products, right? So as we open up those more and more, we are reaching back out and say like, hey, we actually can do this now. So on that side, yes, but we also handle the whole thing. On the side, like approvals, on the side, like we actually do all of that. You need a Mexican tax ID to run through everything, and we have one. We have several actually. Surprise! So we actually we do all of the approval stuff. So on your end, it's mostly, hey, send me this documentation. A lot of the time, like FDA approved products are pretty much good to go. There's enough sort of crossover between. I mean, I think Mexico just surpassed China as the U.S.'s #1 trading partner, which is this happened about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So that'll give you the scale of sort of how intertwined it is. So a lot of this we actually is it's not directly crossoverable, new word, but we actually get to say, hey, like here's the FDA papers, and they go, okay, cool. Let me just do. You're good to go. In some cases, it's like, bro, this is gonna take 8 months. Let's not even, it's gonna take 8 months and a couple $1,000. Let's it's not worth it for you right now. So the hassle we try to do is hassle free as possible. Then the only other thing that you really have to worry about, and it's something that we consistently sort of we still try to bring internal, like at least the stress of it, is like how much you want to spend, how do you want to, creatives we can generate them, but can you send me your creative like templates or branding, anything that you may have, because we're born out of an agency, right? We get to run everything and out execute everyone on platform through the agency. So like we don't run our own advertising team. We already have an advertising team that we're leveraging to make sure that your products are being, positioned as well as possible. So a lot of these headaches we're just trying to take off of your mind. Like you said, this is literally the idea is we're selling an unproven market. I'm sure a year from now, when another Amazon statistics coming out saying, hey, like top the numbers again, it's going to get easier to sort of sell people on the market. But right now it's like, I know that you have your hesitations. Let me just make it easy. Because ultimately our value is helping people get in. Like,
like I said,
and there's probably some other marketplaces other than Amazon. I'm guessing that you guys may help with. Are there any other marketplaces that you guys can help with?
Yeah, so we had to come up with a couple neat logistic solutions to make sure that we were running originally into issues like, oh no, we have inventory in one but not the other, and so we had to come up with a couple just clever and like both API sort of like backend connections, and then also just like inventory distribution things. But because we actually do run on Mercado Libre as well, and that's a huge part for us. Mercado Libre, I believe this year is the first year that Amazon is bigger than Mercado Libre in Mexico, I believe. But I would have to double check on that, and I think it's just I may be basing it on previous trends on how close it was to overtaking it, but it's huge, it's gigantic, and really depending on the product that you have, you're going to see different sort of volume distributions. You'll see with some of our products, Mercado Libre just is crushing Amazon. Wow. Because the demographic that's searching for these products is primarily on Mercado Libre and so on. So again, we use this data to allocate inventory and to make sure that it's making sense. But it's a huge part. Like that's a huge thing. Like I said, there's alternatives. There's a NARF equivalent for Mercado Libre. It's called Mercado Libre Global Selling. You send your product to Miami, and then they ship it from there. But again, like if that's the route, like the reason I'm very happy with that is if that's a route you want to go, like then we're probably not the solution for you.
Okay.
right? Like, so massive market. Sorry, I tend to digress a little bit.
That's all right.
No,
What
good.
in terms of the products themselves, are there things that are restricted from being sold in Mexico based on like the category, like electronics, or where the products originally manufactured? Are there any things that is just right off the bat, you're like, you cannot sell that in the Mexico marketplace?
Not really. There's some supplements that the U.S. will approve that Mexico has banned. Other than that, it's mostly a tariff thing. It's mostly going to be like, hey, man, like this was made in China, which you already paid tariffs on the way into the U.S. You're going to pay more tariffs on the way to me. Does it really make sense? We have clients that go, yes, it does make sense. Like, go ahead, let's, because next shipment, we'll just send it from China, and then we'll only pay the tariff once and so on. So, as far as fully restricted products, not so much. It's mostly products that we can't make sense for you right now. It's the how we present it,
Let's say I've been selling my product in the U.S. marketplace, whatever, 10 years. Very established listing, lots of reviews, doing great. If we partner with you and now we want to get that product into the Mexico marketplace, just run through your account, are you piggybacking off of that U.S. listing, or are you rewriting it in Spanish?
Okay, so that's a couple of questions. One, we absolutely have to rewrite it. Amazon's translations are bad, and they're also not SEO optimized, right? Like, so we do have to rewrite it. We have the content team, so that they do that. Images, it depends on the market and price point. What we find is some price points in some markets prefer English listings or English images. So we will leave those up. If not, then we will generate those as well. As far as the piggybacking of the actual listing, we generally try to. We want to hold on to those reviews, which is the number one reason. Unless, and this is something that we try not to do, but we've had problems with, let's say you have 4.5 stars in the US, but all the Mexican reviews are 1 star because whoever sold it before. I'll get to that in a second. If all the Mexican reviews are 1 star, then that's going to drop our conversion rate. So we're open to like generating new listings for them and so on. But that's something that we talk over with our clients, right? Because what happened, and this is what I was going to get into, for a long time is a lot of there's a lot of US products are findable in Mexico through drop shippers that are 3.5xing the price, and then just ordering from Amazon.com and paying that shipping and making up that difference. But there's no one going after them, right? Because US sellers can't protect their listing, right? And you can't go straight into Mexico. There's no solution for it. And that's what we really see as our primary competition, right? It's like, all right, look, first of all these guys that are reselling, let's get them out. Let's get them out, and let's give the consumer a fair, and let's get the consumer a fair price, man. Let's get the consumer a fair price. Like I said, our first priority is consumers, right? Like, but yeah, so. Oh, I lost my train of thought for a second. I got shaken like an Etch-a-Sketch for a second.
We were talking about the listing. You'll redo the listings. You'll try to piggyback off the reviews unless there's low review count or bad review count on the Mexican side, or if there's been a lot of resellers.
Exactly. So thank you. So the way to wrap that up is the resellers very often give consumers awful experiences, and that's where those 1-star reviews come from. Because the 1-star reviews very often, if you like Google Translate them, what they'll say is never arrived, arrived broken, package arrived open, because it went through customs and customs opened it to make sure you're not, doing dodgy things. So that's some of the times that we'll have to recreate the listings, but for the most part, we just do try to piggyback.
Are there any? This is kind of tying in selling, but I've heard of like sourcing shows or sourcing conferences that take place either in Mexico City, I believe there's one. But how are those performing? Do you guys go to those at all, like to see brands and help them out, or what's that look like?
We missed. So there's this really big one. I'm blanking on the name, but we missed this year. We went last year. This year we just have too many things cooking at once. They're great, honestly. Look, they're growing year over year. Like this is the third year I believe it's been done. They're fantastic. My personal experience, because I try to find sourcing for some of my clients. I was like, so I was there on a work capacity, but then like with a booth and presenting, and then I was like, actually, I'm also going to take a walk around and try to find someone. What I found is they're great, but it felt more networking. We have some close like friends of ours. I can call them partners, but they're also close friends of ours that specialize in sourcing, and they have that business up and running with their own host of headaches. And they did really well at these conferences. So they go every year, and literally all of our booths, we were like sort of sitting around, and they had a line around the block, of people going, hey, yes, this is actually what we're interested in. So there's a huge demand for sourcing. I have friends of mine that literally, like, we didn't meet in the e-commerce space. Like my sister-in-law, who works for a textile sourcing company now in Mexico, right? Wow. Where it's like, hey, we make these hats. Can we make it in Mexico? Sure. Let me find you the manufacturer. Let me send you a couple, and does that whole thing. And they also do the quality control and so on. It's a huge booming market, the sourcing. I think it is probably, if I had been a little smarter, I would have gotten into that first.
Are you seeing the same as far as like private label brands and just, regular people just starting to start their own FBA businesses? Is that a growing area as well?
I love that question because you know what? I tried and I went out and I went knocking on doors. I wanted to do, seriously, typical Amazon example. You know, the essential oil burners where you put the candle underneath, ceramic ones?
Yeah.
I was like, That's it. I'm going after one of those. I'm going to launch one of those. There's a very like known place in like my city or city like adjacent to mine that does ceramics. And I went out and I went knocking on doors. Hello, I'm looking for manufacturers of this. Hello, like literally walked around an entire day. Couldn't find any. Couldn't find any. If anyone wants to be a billionaire right now, make an Alibaba for Mexico. And you know what? I'll be a consumer. But it's not easy because you got to go and you got to go find sourcing agents. And that's sort of what like sourcing companies are doing right now, right?
Yeah.
Because you know what? I could never launch it. You know what would have been easier? Ordering from Alibaba. Getting it.
And they're definitely making those. They're definitely manufacturing that stuff in Mexico.
Like they sell it in Walmart now for 160 pesos, $8. You're not bringing that in and going, like, you're getting that around the block. But how do you find these guys is the huge challenge in Mexican sourcing.
Good opportunity.
So huge opportunity. I mean, look, I'm a huge believer in Mexico, right? There's a reason I moved back here. Mostly, the people, the food, the whatever. I love my country. But over the past couple of years, what we've seen is peso getting super strong. Like, look, I make my money in dollars. I'm earning 15% less. Like, it hurts, but it hurts good because it's good for everyone. We're seeing things like the Tesla factory being built in Mexico, right? Which is right. We're seeing remote work really taking over a lot of the Mexican sort of middle classes, finding these new jobs and generating that wealth. So literally what we're seeing is, I think Mexico is poised for a gold rush over the next 10 years. And we're literally doing like a 1%, like we're doing like such a small slice of the pie of everything that needs to happen, because we've seen this happen in the US, right? Like, what was the US like 2013 to 2020 Amazon? It was insane.
Crazy.
And like,
competition's
it's like,
good.
hey,
competition's good.
competition is great, but you know what I want to do instead of competing? Having 18,000 reviews on my garlic crusher. That's what I want. That's what I want, you know? And that's what that's what we're trying to do, help people get in. And but there's going to be so many more spaces. Like, I guarantee you, Helium 10 is going to like do something for Mexico specifically. And you know, and I guarantee you that anyone, like, so many companies are just going to start throwing things at Mexico because the money's going to be there. Right? Like, that's, I don't know. It's just kind of crazy how we're really excited about our project and we're like,
it's just getting
like
started.
The smallest possible. Yeah, we're the smallest possible bit. So
cool.
It's exciting. I mean, a growing economy there is just going to make e-commerce better and better and better. And on that note, what, like, compared to the US market for like a staple product, let's just say, what kind of volume is Mexico doing on Amazon in comparison? Or you could even combine Mercado Libre with Amazon, like in total, how does that compare if we're selling there?
So on average, what you'll see, so the official statistic for Amazon volume versus US volume is tiny. It's under 5%. And you're like, wait, that's awful. That sounds so bad. Optimized listings that are actually, because it's so much easier to get top of pay of a bunch of search terms. What we're seeing is we're aiming for at least 10% of US sales within the first 6 months, right? At least, just on Amazon. And then you can add the Mercado Libre volume to that. So we're generally looking at about 15%, which to any established company, you go, hey, you want to go a free 15% over the next 6 months? They go, yes, please, here you go.
How do I sign up?
It's like, yeah, it's gonna cost you like $500 a month, man, like in ads. Like, yes, please, let's go. And ultimately, like, it's tough having these conversations where it's like, look, the goal isn't exactly for you to, I mean, like I said, like, we want to get to that 15% within 6 months. But the real value here is you can be the $18,000 review garlic crusher, right? Like, what happens if you're in first, you get that rank 1, and it's a lot easier to hold it. Like, we all know it's a lot easier to hold it than to get it. Right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And let's grow over the next 7 years.
Yeah, because that percentage, that market share is going to keep increasing. It's going to go from 5 and 10% to 15 to 20. I mean, Mexico is not a small population country. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity.
And the way I see it is, okay, so we have 120 million people. Let's round. 120 million people. Let's call it even the top 10%. Like, let's not even go too broad. Like, even the top 10%, 12 million people that are new to buying on the platform. Like, it's an emerging e-commerce market. So I don't talk about 120 million people. Sure, that's a fact. And sure, as Amazon grows, it will trickle and more people, more percentage will buy. But right now, we have essentially 12 million people completely open to trying new brands. Completely open to not have, first of all, not having, there's so many statistics, not having ad blockers on your phone, right? So you're doing everything mobile. There's a less percentage of the population that is doing shopping on their computer than on their phone compared to the US. So there's less ad blockers. So suddenly ads are more valuable. There's less distrust of ads. So ads are more effective, right? These sort of markets, I traded. My job before I got into e-commerce, I traded for 4 years. That was awful for my mental health. I hated it. No one ever do that in your life. Seriously, anyone that says that you can get rich quick trading, it's tough. But what I realized is what you really got to do is look for these inefficient markets. These markets where you're gonna have growing pains, you're gonna have just friction. You don't have all the tools or all the whatever, because that's where you can really like provide solutions and grow with the market. Right? That's sort of my mantra. And like, as soon as in 7 years, when Amazon Mexico is all fleshed out and built out and everyone's already, and huge competition, I'll probably move on to something else, right? Like I'll probably find a different inefficient market to provide
Something will
solutions in.
pop up.
Exactly. I mean, it feels like how many AI millionaires do you think there are right now?
No kidding. No kidding.
Like, you got to keep looking for these like places where people need value and aren't getting it.
So interesting. Do you work with anybody that maybe wants to launch a product and like start an FBA business on Amazon? They have no experience with it in the past, but they don't want to start in the US. They'd rather start in a marketplace where it's less competition. Is that an opportunity for people right now that are looking to do that? Because I mean, the US marketplace, there's challenges now. It's very hard to have $1,000 as a startup budget and launch a product in the US marketplace. Yeah. But maybe if you're looking to start a business, maybe this is a way to approach it, to start in a different market.
Yes, we actually like I said, we have a couple of Mexican clients that are literally just launching in Mexico. And the way they're seeing it is, I want to build the capital to then go to the US.
Yeah.
Right? Because that is a different ballgame. And I will say something. It's not only capital, there's also skill involved. I mean, we all know this. There are skilled sellers that will out execute you at every turn. Oh, you're doing really well on the keyword. Guess what? Now it's in my title. And now I've just pushed right past you. And it gets really tough, right? Like the way I see it, I mean, we have all these conversations within the agency, which is we have to be on point because there's people out there spending hours every day for that single 0.5% of conversion rate. Like this is a very difficult game. I'm lucky that I got to learn this game through an agency standpoint years ago, you know. But in Mexico, that skill ceiling is a little bit lower. In Mexico, what we're seeing is Mexican sellers are also like are making money hand over fist. I remember I was looking at some competitor for launching products because I also did retail arb for a little bit. Because it was crazy. Like retail arbitrage was really like putting money in my pocket for doing nothing. It was crazy. That's like, when's the last time you heard that in the US? Like it doesn't happen anymore, you know? And I was looking at my competitor and then I realized they have a bunch of their own brands. So they had moved on from that. And they were selling, I think it was like $500,000 a month in like 2 or 3 brands that they had launched. And he lived 6 blocks away from me. Like I saw his business address was his home address because I was like, oh, this freaking guy.
Down the road.
And now, and now they're doing ridiculous numbers. Now we actually know them now. I won't say names, but yeah, I mean, there's definitely a road to like, hey, I want to launch in Mexico. I'm gonna build up sort of the skills in the capital and then move into the US. That's happening a lot.
Ramiro, that it's fascinating. I mean, all of this, we've learned a lot. And I know there's got to be so many people watching and listening right now that are like, I need to do this. I need to get in touch with Ramiro.
Honestly, you really do. You really do. Like,
like you said, I mean, if you can add 15% volume, why not? I mean, it's like, go for it. So how do people, what do they need to do? What do they need to do to work with you, get the conversation started?
So we actually, I foolishly, the hubris, I have my my Calendly open. So it's geez, you can go to GoAvance.com, sign up for our newsletter. That we can basically the way we're running our newsletter right now isn't like a regular like, because the thing is like, hey, neat news, here you go, neat news, here you go. Whenever we're finding more and more things, you can sign up for our newsletter, or you can reach out via the website. We have a messaging space, or we have a book a call button. And honestly, like right now, we're at a spot where we've built up the infrastructure internally to be able to quickly assess whether the project is viable for you, right? And if the project is viable for you, then we can start talking about next steps. But right now, we're just trying to help people assess whether they should be interested in Mexcio.
Love it.
Yeah, I'm on your guys' website now. There's a little contact button at the top right. Lots of ways to get in contact with them.
Absolutely. Yep. We'll make sure that link is everywhere, Ramiro. Everyone go check out GoAvance.com. Thanks for joining us. We will definitely love to stay in touch and keep up with what's going on. It's anything like what happened in the U.S. marketplace. Every day there's a change. Every day something's getting better, tougher, whatever. So we want to follow up.
Informed Consumers Act. Hey, by the way, your account's going to be deactivated. Oh no, panic.
Yeah.
Guys, seriously, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh,
thank you for having me. Absolute pleasure.
Yep, we really enjoyed it, and we encourage everyone to go check you guys out, goavance.com. So thanks, Ramiro, for joining us, and thanks everybody for tuning in today. It's been a lot of fun, and we'll be back at this again on the next episode tomorrow.